Hello, fellow citizens of the Soviet Republic. My name is Forzion and I am here with another attempt to create content connected with this game, and this will be a tutorial about signaling for you, and I hope it will help you to play the game better and to create better setups, because I want to share some of my knowledge, some of my experience in this case. And I prepared this polygon for you, which contains of several stations, several storages, a steel mill, and also an unloading, and there are multiple trains running all around that track. So let's start with introducing what kinds of signals do we have. So what we have is we have three types of signals in this game. One is simple block signal, then we have chain signal, and we have mix signal, which is a combination of simple block signal and chain signal, and with different signals each directions, and it fits best for stations and turning points. So basic block signal works in a way that it is read if there is train in the next block, and you can see blocks distinguished by color, highlighted. Each block has different color, and the borders of block are signals on each side. And here you can see the train is not allowed to continue if there is train in this. And block signal works in a way it does not allow the train to enter if the next block after this is red, so it is not able to go until the train leaves the signal, then it gets green. This is good to use before junctions, where in places where you don't want trains to stop in the junction because there is train in the block after the junction. That way the train will stop before the junction and will not block other trains for in passing those junctions. And another thing we need to mention is there is also white signal implemented, which allows trains to pass simultaneously through the same block if they are not colliding. So for example, two trains can go, and you saw that just few seconds ago how two trains were passing the same junction and were not colliding with each other. And because of that purpose I built this track to showcase that, to show how multiple trains can go through these junctions if they arrive at the same time. So let's go into another thing, and that is you need to be aware of length of your trains, and you need to create enough space between signals for trains not to overreach to previous block. In certain circumstances you can allow that, but you need to be aware of that, especially when where you have junctions. So here you can see I use unified length for trains, I use the train aggregate loading as a ruler for this case, and the trains are not being longer than this, and I'll have space between signals always for trains of this length to use all the space available. And in that way you can have as many trains as you have blocks on the line, but it will not be so efficient if you overfill it too much. Another thing we need to mention are stations. So we have two types of stations, single track and multi-track. We have single track, which are mainly storages. Open storages or warehouses have single track loading, unloading, and In this case, it's the best way is to direct trains from one direction into it, because if you are doing multiple entries from multiple directions, it can cause some issues. We will get to that later. So basic setup is you need a track. I am always using double track. In very simple setups you can use single track, but I recommend if you are going to use multiple trains, more than 2-3, it is much better to use double track, even if it is more expensive. My usual setup is to have 2 or more waiting tracks next to the station. For one train can be loaded and 2 trains can wait until it leaves the station in this case, and 1 track is for leaving the station. Of course you can build more than that, and you need to count in the waiting times, because for example if you will have a train there waiting too long, then 2 more trains can come and wait in those waiting tracks, and if you have more than 3 trains coming to that station, it can cause that 1 train will wait on the main line and block the whole traffic until the train will be able to get into waiting tracks. Because of that you need to have sufficient number of waiting tracks all the time, and consider how many trains will you use and not use too many of them. For example, I have more than 3 trains in this case. I have 5 coming to this station, but they are not loading, they are just entering and turning, so it is quite fast for that purpose. Next thing, we have double and more track stations. I don't use any specialty here, I just use the basic platforms we have for passengers, and I created this setup just to showcase how you can create 4 platforms and allow passengers to pass from one to another, and you can use this for transfers, for changes from one line to another line, because they cannot change inside the platform, but they can change for another one. So here we have a setup I use usually if I have double track through station, which means the trains can come from both directions. For example, if you use only one direction, then there is no issue with having the station built in the way that you have 2 tracks in and then an X crossing, because that is the most efficient, because trains can go into each. But in this case we have an option that train will come from one direction and train will come from other direction, and some trains will turn, some trains will continue. And because of that I use this Z junction here for that purpose, to allow the train to turn, and if the train wants to turn it will come only into this track into the right, and it can continue. There is no way it will block the train coming from the other direction, or it can turn and go backwards. So I think this is the most efficient setup, and here you can see how the signals are being made. So I use a chain signal for entry, mix signal for the turning track, chain signal for the exit, and the basic block signal after the junction. If there is no another junction, for example here we have another junction, so here we need to use chain signals, just because train may stop here or here if there is train, and that will block the traffic. But in this case it is not so much an issue, because recently or a few months ago white signals were introduced, and that allows multiple trains to pass through each block if they are not blocking each other. Next thing we need to mention are turning lines, which is a nice feature. It's a bit bugged because it's not working exactly how it should, but it works. And that is, in this case, I have a waypoint in this track here, and it works in a way that train which comes through this station here, this warehouse, can go in, turn and go backwards. And I use that as example because you need to direct your trains through single track stations if they are through. It is more efficient to do it this way, and you will avoid the deadlocks, than to allow them to come through from two separate directions as you have here. Because in some cases it may happen that train will pass through this signal and block the train which passed through that signal, and that way you will have an issue. So it would be much more efficient if I would bring that train through, create a turning track somewhere and bring it through that station. But for testing purposes I created this. So here you saw the train how it turned. Unfortunately it does not stop on that. Later maybe it will be adjusted in the game. Another feature which is coming is that you will have more intelligent chain signals before the station, and that should allow trains to go multiple trains into the same station from multiple directions, and they will direct the train into different track. So for example, if a train will come from one direction and simultaneously a train will come from the other direction, one train will be directed to one track and the other train will be directed to the other track that is coming to the game too. And here we have the most basic setup people use. And I don't think this setup is efficient. Of course you can have some deadlocks in this case, because the train will enter and the other train may be directed to the same track, and that's the problem. Because of that I recommend to use, as I mentioned, directed traffic, and that way you can have much better efficiency, because the train can always go in and turn, and if it needs to continue it can always continue. And even before we had these mixed signals, we were able to solve this quite efficiently. If we remove these signals here, I usually use these bypass lines which allow me to create smoother traffic and avoid several signals which are not necessary then. And trains are not likely to block each other in any way. For example, there we used 4 signals, here we use only 3 signals for each direction. And this is the most efficient way I think you can build your passenger stations, because the train can come and turn and leave, and the other one which goes through just can continue through. So here you can see that it works quite well in this case. So we have potential problems still in this game, and that is caused if you have 2 directions of entry into single track station or double track. It is always a problem if you have not directed your traffic. Sometimes it happens that two trains will come at the same time and somehow one will pass, the one which comes through will pass and enter the junction which is meant to be an exit. But I guess we have an option how to solve this here. Yes, I just spotted an idea how we can do this to avoid that deadlock in this case. So we may do it this way. So if we want to avoid trains blocking each other, you need to do it, for example, this way. Now we need some more wool, like that, and we need to place a chain there and a chain there. Yeah, and that will now avoid any blockage, because even the train passes through, that other train should be able to leave, even though they are not distinguished very well. But the time will show how it will work. No, so I think that is it. We showcase some recommended setups. For example, let's go into basic setups. We have single track station from one direction, you need the waiting tracks exit. Multi-line station from one direction, you will need multiple waitings, one exit, for example here. And then through stations, when you have trains coming through from multiple directions, you can use directed traffic, one line for one direction turning, other line for other direction and turning. And I think that's it, and I want to thank you for watching. If you like the video, please give it a like. You can subscribe to my channel, and I hope we will be able to create more tutorials. One of them will be heating tutorial, another of them will be electric wiring tutorial. So see you again in another video sooner or later. Bye.